Oh, well. Hey everybody. Thanks for coming to... Coming to? That doesn't make any sense. Thanks for watching the second video in my chest improvement series. So, chest improvements number 2. Well, I don't know what that was. That's very weird. Today, we're going to be doing some tactics. And not just random tactics training. But what I thought would be better is if I make a very specific custom set in chest tempo and using that as an excuse also to show you how to make custom sets, but basically kind of start from the idea of streamlining the learning process, making things a little easier while adding a little bit of challenge. So today we're only going to start by focusing on only going to start by that doesn't make sense either. We're going to start by focusing on only 2 tactics in a set, so all of the puzzles will be related to one or the other. And then as we become more and more accustomed to finding those tactics, we might, hell, jump up to 3 tactics, 3 different tactical motifs today. So, yeah, that's what we're going to do. But for people who don't necessarily know what we mean by the tactical motifs, well, we're going to use the tactical motifs or the types of tactics that they have on chess tempo because they have the best to kind of create your own puzzle set thing. So first we go to problems and problem search, and this is available to users who are silver, gold, or platinum. I don't actually know if platinum is a thing, but I'm a silver user and I can do it. You just go to problem search, and use the advanced search option. And then you can just choose all sorts of tactics that you want from here. And if you hit control, you can hit multiple tactics and deselect as well. Or shift, you know, as the interneters want to do. And if this little screen is too small for you, hit F12, and then Control Shift C. You can find the actual element and you can make it bigger. So let's say for me, I'm gonna make it 200 pixels and close that. There we go. So it's a little bit bigger. You can look at all these different lovely mates that you can choose from, etc., etc. So today we're gonna do double attacks, and we're gonna do pins, which is under P. So double attacks and pins, and we'll say from the standard mix, anything is fine. And then there is quality. We're going to move that to 4 to 5. And then let's do a search for that. Okay. So, search. Oh, these are new game details. That's very interesting. So, we did a search for it, and we got 1,414 puzzles. That's good. And then we're going to create a problem set from it. And we'll call this pins and forks. And set as current set. You know, that being said, although we have now created a set with pins and fork tactics in them, this isn't limited to problems that only have pins and forks. We will still have problems that have additional things, including pins and forks. So we still, as we're training, there are other motifs that we're still going to have to kind of realize and work with, but that's alright. I think that's fine. We can't get mad at ourselves if we don't see the things we're not practicing for. But let's just focus on the pins and forks. And there are also going to be problems where we will have both pins and forks at the same time, which will be a discovered attack. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how this all works. So let's start now. Okay, and now that we have the puzzle set, let's just talk through the puzzles and see what we have. So black made a move. Looks like rook coming down on b2 for a check is going to be problematic. We have two rooks of our own, but they're not on great squares. We could do some kind of knight check with knight to f6. Oh, no, right clicking doesn't work on this. Does left clicking? No. Shift clicking? No, no. So we have knight to f6 for a check, but rook takes, then rook takes. That being said, no, there's no particular reason we would do that, I don't think. There's also no reason necessarily for the rook to have to take the knight on f6. Like, let's say, knight f6, king to g3, or h3. It seems fairly innocuous. Although, that being said, I don't know. Let's continue the line. Excuse me. Knight f6, king g3, rook g5, check. King has to go to h3, check again, rook, and then no, I don't see it. It does put the king into a lovely little corner there for almost a checkmate, so that's pretty good. But as we're focusing on pins and double attacks, it's probably not the attack we're looking for. Oh, I'm a silly goose. So here's the pin we have. Rook going to g5. This is actually more of a skewer, but either way works for me. King's going to have to move out of the way. King's going to have to go to h3. That's the only legal place he can go. At which point, we can check. King has to move down. Is that good? Is that bad? Doesn't seem great. So instead of doing that, we could just take, but then he takes the rook back. So is that good? Is that bad? That doesn't seem great. The rook to g5 seems pretty strong. Very forceful. I guess we can also do h1, rook to h1 for a check, and then have him do the thing we were talking about before. Rook to h2 to block. So, rook to g5 check, king to h3, rook to h1 check, rook to h2. And if we could do rook to g3, that'd be great, but pawn can just take, so that's not so great. Oh, I guess we can just do knight to f3 for a final check at that point. Okay, so great. Alright, so we have a skewer, and then we have a forced move, a block, and then finally a check using the knight, kind of a smothered mate of sorts. Boom, and boom. And there we go. And let's see, let's look at the tags here. There's a pin. Is that a pin? Is that more of a skewer? Coercing. That's a nice way to put it. And blocking in an exposed king. Okay, well, that's fun. So we got that first problem out of the way. It was, I would say, description-wise, pins aren't necessarily skewers. Some people might get mad at that kind of description, but personally, I don't really care either way, so I'm okay with that. The idea basically with any kind of X-ray attack is that there are valuable pieces on one line that will become vulnerable to each other, so I think in that sense it does make sense. So let's move on to the next puzzle. Alright, let's see what we got here. We got some late mid-game going on, and the queen wants a trade. Why does the queen want to trade? I don't know. How do we not take this trade? What looks valuable? What can we take that is... What can we do? What can we do? So ideally, if that bishop wasn't there, if the bishop on d4 wasn't there, queen takes c3 check would be pretty sweet. But this doesn't look like a puzzle that's going to have that, because if rook takes bishop on d4, then queen can take just queen. Then, oh, you know what? Never mind. Okay, so that is the that is the problem. So, uh, a suggestion I had heard from a much higher ranked player once is that try to look for an ideal tactical situation, and then if there are pieces that are stopping you from doing it. This was specifically about checkmate, so I don't know how true it is about with other tactics or combinations, but the advice was find the ideal tactical situation, and then in this case find the ideal checkmate that you can do, and then try to see what's blocking you from doing the checkmate. And in that situation, you can try to distract, or remove the guard against that checkmate, and then do the checkmate. In this situation, as I said, queen takes c3 is great, because the only place that the king can go is either f1 or d1, in which case I get a free rook. Not only that, I get a free rook, and not only that, if it's on d1 and the king has to move out of the first rank, then I get another rook. So that'd be sweet. So I was thinking, well, if the rook takes the bishop, then the queen takes queen, and then I'm going to have to take with my pawn, and then his pawn's going to take my rook, and then I'm out. I've traded a rook for a bishop, and that's not great. However, in this situation, what's actually great is if rook takes here and queen takes here, rook can just take queen, and I'm up a bishop, which is great too. And if they do decide to take my rook with the pawn first, then I can do exactly what I was meaning to do, which is get a free rook anyway. So this is great. And there you go. So in that sense, we had a double attack when our queen moved to c3, and I was attacking both the king and the rook. And there was a sacrifice and capturing a defender. That is exactly what we did. So that is pretty neat. And I'm sorry if there's a lot of, phlegmy coughs going on. It's icky, I know, but I'm just getting over a sickness. I don't even know if I'm over it yet, but this is how it is. And it seems like every time I make a chess video, it's always when I have a sickness. I don't know why. This seems pretty easy. Just gonna move that rook there to d6, check. King's gonna have to move. Doesn't matter where he moves, because next turn I'm just gonna take that rook. And in fact, dare I say it, but the king should probably go back up to b6 to help that bishop. Because if I do the check on d6, king moves to somewhere other, then b6, then the rook's gonna take the bishop very soon as well. So that kinda sucks. Oh wow, that's really bad. So yeah. I guess in this case you could try to save the bishop, and then I just move my knight away, but that seems like a weird way to play. Like, you're already down pieces. You want to save as much as you can. Oh, I guess in this sense you are saving more by taking away the opportunity to take the bishop. So maybe, yeah, no, actually, that's probably the right way to go. Oh, that was very simple. Oh, I didn't look at the tags, though. Okay, well, that was a simple one. Let's do another one. So, in this situation, that knight looks pretty juicy. I'm playing as black. Queen to d4 seems pretty okay. if I do take queen to b4 or d4, then rook takes rook on c4, but then I have a knight ready. In fact, I might just take with the queen and trade down from there because I'm already up a minor piece, so I would not mind that. I would be trading the knight, the rook, and the queen for my rook and my queen, and so where would we be at in that sense? We'd only be even at that point. What the fuck? Well, that's not good. No, that's not good at all. How would we only be even? Am I crazy? What the fuck? Oh, okay. They are above me in minor pieces. That's fine. Jeez. Okay, so they have more minor pieces than me right now. So maybe there is a tactic of some kind that can win me more things. Oh, you know what? The queen to d4 comes with an extra bonus that I didn't even see. Queen to d4 is a check. So that being said, this is actually a huge material advantage for us. Queen to d4, queen takes on d4, check. King has to move, or never mind, just kidding. King doesn't have to move. There is king h1 or rook f2. At which point our rook now can take the rook on c3, or we can take with our queen on c3, and then we'll be up one major piece. And depending on how it goes, we can probably try and force him to trade queens, and we'd be going into the endgame with a major piece advantage. That being said, I don't know what's better. I mean, the queen d4 is definitely going to happen, and whatever happens here happens. Let's say, for simplicity's sake, that the rook to f2 is going to happen. Queen d4 check. Rook f4. What is better? Rook takes rook on c3. Rook takes rook. Queen moves and pins us on our own rook. Then we take another one. Then rook go. Oh no, rook's up here. JK. Then we could do something tricky with our knight. What can happen? Or we can simply just take with the queen, in which case the queen can't go anywhere over here on the A file. Doesn't help to go to B2. Can go to B1. Either way, I think taking with the queen first and being a little bit more aggressive might help in this situation. Oh, I didn't even think of that. Okay, blocking with a rook. Should have saw that. Should have seen that. Should have... I don't know what I'm saying anymore. Okay, well, I'm a clumsy fool. I didn't even think of that. That being said, what is the correct thing to do in this situation? So we did the double attack, and now we have a pinned piece. Can't we just move our rook over? And then he defends with another rook? I guess that could happen. But take, and then check, queen takes. But the other rook could go. This is very interesting. Yeah, so then I take with that. Oh! Oh, it was going so well. And then I fucked it up. Alright, let's retry this. So this is correct, but they say that the rook taking the rook is no good. Oh, I guess I can go here now, can't I? Wait, no I can't. Why would I be able to go there? That'd be an insane move. If I go there, the queen can just take. So no, that's not good. That isn't good. I guess the rook can take, but then the bishop can take, so that doesn't seem good. Why is this not good? Rook takes rook. Queen takes rook, let's say, even. Then queen takes queen, and then check. And king can get out. Okay, maybe not great. So if queen takes, then rook takes. Rook, queen. Oh, that doesn't seem good. I don't know what we should do. I mean, is it fast enough for us to play the pawn to g4, move the bishop down one, and then play? Then knight to d5, which puts another attacker on the rook? And that's quite a puzzle if that's the case. Try again. So it's not a bad move. That rook is pinned. It is very, very pinned. What if I just move the knight over to d5 without getting rid of the bishop? Well, then the bishop takes. That doesn't look very good. No, it doesn't. Alright. Another idea is something like rook to c1, and then rook takes rook on c1. Then I get rook on e3. But why? Is that any better? I don't know. There are still 2 rooks on the board. It just seems kind of even, really. I could make it worse by doing rook to c1, rook takes rook on c1, and then queen takes on e3. And then we'd have to trade queens. Is that any better? No. It's a minor piece and a major piece each. So that doesn't seem good. I honestly don't know. Another interesting idea of some sort would be like rook taking b4, but then queen just takes. Then what? Can I take? Well, if I do rook takes b4, what does the queen have to do? What is the threat that I'm putting her under? It's not really a threat, really. No. Well, let's see the answer. Uh-huh. Oh god, it is c1. Why? Why is it c1? Uh-huh. And then what? Okay. Oh, I see. Okay. I see. So the reason that you don't move the queen away in that situation is because if they do try to save the queen currently, like let's say they move to c3. No, that doesn't save the queen. Let's say they move to c4. Then for the next move, we have a check with e1, rook to e1, double check. And that would be mate. And that's why. I see. Did not see the double mate. And since that's not part of the tactics that we were looking for, I guess I'm not that angry about it. But, yeah. Because of the fear of double mate, something has to be done. Queen either has to be sacrificed for the rook, or king has to move. Either way, the queen's going down. Oops. That's a pretty neat tactic, though, sacrificing the other rook. Okay, so rook has moved to d8, putting pressure on my queen on d2. The king on the black side is a bit exposed, but there isn't anything directly in his line. However, this bishop on b2 is staring at him, so that's kind of nice on the long diagonal. So let's try to see what we have here. If I take rook with my queen, queen takes d8, then knight takes d8. And not very good. Queen takes d8, knight takes c8. Let's continue on. Rook to c7, king to h6. Looks like king's pretty fine. So that isn't good. If I try to do rook takes c6, then rook takes d2 follows right after. Oh, I see. Okay. Well, in this situation, I can take the knight on c6 and not even worry about the rook taking on d2, because if he takes on d2 after that, rook can take e6 afterwards. So that's pretty sweet. So yeah, I'd be up a knight, then he'd take a queen, then I'd take his queen, then he'd take a bishop. Oh, okay, so that's not sweet anymore. But at which point I can move my rook up to e7, check again, and then take another bishop, whereas he doesn't have any moves after that. So we're just going to play this out. Oh, never mind, and we stop there. But yeah, it's basically just a tradey continuation where I have one step ahead of him. Counting, as I say. Extra 2, rook takes b2. What the crap? Alright. That's interesting. But yeah, that's a fairly simple one. And also, you get a nice double attack from the rook, which in this sense is like a pin on both sides or something. Ah, God, there has to be a name for all of this that's easier. Okay, so in this, what happened? Rook took rook. Oh no. This looks like some kind of mating possibility. But what? So, interestingly enough, there is bishop takes rook, and then queen can take bishop. So all of that exists. Is that great? Not really. Another one that's interesting is we have bishop to c5, guarded by our queen on f2. And the rook has to move when that happens. Queen to f7 check is fairly strong. King has to move to h8. And then I guess we can take from there. In which case we'd be up a rook. So bishop to c5. Rook moves to, let's say, e8. Queen takes f7 check. King to h8. And then bishop takes. And then queen's going to have to do something before I have to worry about my bishop. Other side, bishop goes to c5. Rook takes, queen takes. And I've traded fairly well. Oh, and in fact, bishop goes, rook can't take because then I can just take the queen. So, yeah, this just looks like the right move. And then I'll just trade a rook for the bishop. That seems like the best idea for him. There we go. Alright. Well, that's cool. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that fun? And yeah, because we have to remember that that rook was actually pinned. Interesting. Okay, let's do another one here. So this, my rook, is kind of my pin to myself, but this is more like a discovered attack, and this pawn is a fakey fake defender. That queen isn't actually safe. So already I'm getting some ideas. This is the idea I have initially. Rook e1 check. Uh, in which case I guess he would defend with rook d1 because that's the only possible one. Queen takes queen on d3, and then he can't actually take the queen back. uh, and then I don't know what he's gonna have to do. Rook to d2, I guess. Okay, so yeah, that is actually the serious, yeah, continuation of this is rook a1 check, rook d1, queen takes queen, rook to d1, rook takes rook, rook takes rook. Oh, they don't want to do that because queen can just take and that's check. Oh my gosh, okay, so yeah, I think, was he here? He was here. As much as that seems like the bad line, I think that's the line they have to take. So rook e1 check, uh, rook d1, queen takes queen, rook d2, rook takes rook, king has to take rook. In which case, queen f1 is checkmate. If rook takes rook again, then there's just queen takes c2, which is also checkmate. That's crazy. Oh, I didn't think about that. That's much better than me. This is why I suck. But we got a free queen out of it for a rook, so I would say that's pretty fantastic. Alright, seems like I embarrassed myself enough tonight by not knowing what the fuck I'm doing. Hope you enjoyed it. How did I do today? I did 7 puzzles, and I got 6 of them right. Yay! Let's look at the one I got wrong today, and we'll full screen this bitch again. Okay, right. This was the one where I took with the queen. This rook is pinned. We're playing with that idea. And then they're afraid of a checkmate that I didn't see. So we can play around that idea. And they have to move the king, and then we get the queen afterwards. Yeah, this is a little too advanced for me, I think. I'm not smart enough. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Next time on Chess Improvement, we'll probably be doing more tactical puzzles. We'll probably add another tactic to the mix. And yeah, we'll see if I can recognize the tactics and play around them or with them or whatever it is that we need to do with tactics. Okay, see you guys later.